You know that feeling when you first step into Amsterdam? It's like stepping into a postcard with those tall, narrow buildings and winding canals. They're absolutely iconic, right? I remember walking along those cobblestone streets, surrounded by bicycles, and thinking, this is the heart of the city. But then, as you wander towards the eastern districts, something changes. The street names become, well, quite different.
Yes, exactly. You're walking along and suddenly you see names like Balustrade and Sumatrastrade. They sound so exotic compared to Lindenstraat or Damstraat. What's fascinating is that these names aren't just random, they're clues to a lesser-known part of Amsterdam's history linked to the Dutch East Indies. It's a connection most people gloss over, but it holds the weight of the Dutch colonial past. I wonder how many visitors actually pause to consider the stories behind these names.
So true. The Indische Board, or Indian neighborhood, is like a tapestry of this colonial connection. While walking there, it's almost like you're touching the edges of a history many don't even know exists. Each name is more than just a location. It's a page from a storybook detailing voyages, trades, and even conflicts. But why would a city so rich in its own culture borrow these distant names?
That's exactly the question. The names aren't just accidental. They echo the far-reaching influence of the Dutch colonial empire built by the once mighty Dutch East India Company. But how did it all come to pass? What drove the Dutch to expand so aggressively into Southeast Asia? There's so much to uncover about their motivations and actions. Trust me, listeners won't want to miss the deep dive into this chapter of history as we unravel this fascinating tale.
Back in the 16th century, European trade was bustling in places like Bruges and Antwerp. These were the main hubs where merchants from all over came to trade goods. The Portuguese played a huge role during this time, especially since they were pioneers of maritime navigation. They were key players of the Age of Discovery, setting up outposts everywhere. However, this was also the time when the Habsburg Empire had control over regions like the Netherlands.
Yes, within that empire there was a lot of tension, especially between the Dutch and Spanish. The political repression, along with other issues, made the Dutch feel oppressed under the Spanish rule. This led to the Dutch Revolt, which was part of the 80 Years' War. During this period, the spice trade was also shifting its routes. The Portuguese, now tied with the Spanish, angled their trade away from the usual Dutch ports, which in turn heightened the friction.
This change was a heavy hit on the Dutch economy. Suddenly, the spices that used to flow smoothly into Dutch cities were no longer available. Prices started to rise, and there was a pressing need for the Dutch to find new ways to sustain themselves. They couldn't rely on buying from the Portuguese anymore. So what did they do? They had to think about becoming independent and self-reliant.
Exactly. And this is where the seeds for the VOC were sown. It's an intriguing tale of how the Dutch courageously turned to a new strategy. Their ambition fueled what was to become an emergence of a dominant trade force. It's exciting to think about how they planned and executed this bold move. I think it sparks the curiosity in us to explore further how the VOC came into existence and revolutionized trade with their innovative approaches.
As the need for self-reliance grew, the Dutch faced a formidable challenge. Navigating the sea routes to Asia wasn't something they were naturally equipped for at first. They had to rely on secretive endeavors to gather enough information to map a viable route. It was a daunting task, almost like piecing together a gigantic puzzle. They knew the Portuguese kept their charts closely guarded, but the Dutch weren't ones to give up easily.
Indeed, faced with those barriers, their determination didn't waver. In fact, it only fueled their resolve. So in 1595, a bold expedition set sail from the Netherlands towards the far lands of Asia. Led by Cornelis de Houtman, they embarked on what many considered a perilous adventure. Unfortunately, upon reaching the island of Java, things took a tumultuous turn. They were met with both suspicion and hostility. The Portuguese and local traders viewed them as intruders.
It's true that their first journey wasn't the success they had hoped for. Many lives were lost to disease, and the welcome they received in Java was far from warm. Yet, it taught them valuable lessons. The real breakthrough took place in 1598, when a second, better-prepared fleet reached the Maluku Islands, the very heart of the rich spice trade. This time, they bypassed the previous barriers and managed to acquire a wide variety of spices directly.
What an accomplishment that was! This direct trade with the Maluku Islands meant they no longer had to rely on intermediaries. The success of this expedition was a turning point and led to significant economic benefits for the Dutch. The profits were enormous, offering returns of over 400%. Such success didn't just mark a financial triumph, but also paved the way for their innovative ideas in finance, especially the concept of spreading risk through pooled investments.
The Dutch merchants essentially revolutionized how trade ventures were financed. Instead of risking everything on one voyage, they spread investments across multiple journeys. This strategic approach allowed them to absorb the losses from any failed ventures, while the successful ones would more than make up for the failure. It was the birth of a novel financial system, one that laid the foundation for modern stock markets.
And indeed, these financial innovations were crucial steps leading up to what would become the foundation of the VOC, the very first multinational corporation. They not only changed trade, but also introduced some of the key concepts that still influence our financial systems today. It's incredible how these early challenges and breakthroughs set the stage for what was to become an era of colossal trade activity. We're on the cusp of the VOC's formation, a point in history that changed the world.
So, after the challenges of navigating and all those daring voyages, the Dutch were ready for a big change. In 1602, they decided to create something similar to what the English had done just a few years before. They founded the Dutch East India Company, or VOC for short. It wasn't just any company. They had backing from the Dutch government, which gave them some extraordinary powers.
Exactly. The VOC was more than just a commercial enterprise. It acted almost like a mini-state. They had the authority to build forts, wage war, and sign treaties. Pretty incredible, right? Soon after its founding, the VOC began to expand its reach. John Peter Soon Cohen, a significant figure in its early history, played a crucial role in these expansions. His leadership in establishing Batavia as the Asian headquarters marked the beginning of a powerful Dutch presence in the East Indies.
Tensions, however, were inevitable. The VOC's ambitions clashed with those of the English East India Company. There was an infamous event known as the Amboina Massacre, where several English traders were executed by the VOC. This incident severely affected relations between the two companies and even led to diplomatic tensions between England and the Netherlands.
Those aggressive tactics and expansion strategies were part of the VOC's approach to dominate global trade. These actions set the stage for intense competition across the oceans, not just with the English but with other emerging trade powers. It's fascinating to see how the VOC's vision for supremacy in trade really shaped the early dynamics of international business and warfare. The stakes were incredibly high during those times.
As we've seen, the VOC wasn't just interested in controlling the spice trade, but was heavily invested in managing an elaborate network of trade routes between Asia and Europe. They cleverly expanded their operations to touch upon various trade ports, not only in Europe, but deep into Asia. This interconnectedness allowed them to ship goods efficiently across vast distances. Their success wasn't limited to spices. They tapped into the rich intra-Asian trade, dealing in commodities like luxury ceramics from China and silks, proving there was more to trade than just the coveted spices.
Indeed, and the VOC backed numerous explorations, making them trailblazers in mapping the world, as it was known then. These explorations were significant as they not only contributed to expanding geographical knowledge, but also helped lay the foundation for Dutch claims in new regions. Think about New Amsterdam in North America, which would later become the vibrant city of New York. This shows how influential the VOC was, even in places that seemed far from their primary interests in Asian spices.
Their influence spread not only east to Asia, but also south to Africa. The establishment of the Cape Colony at the southern tip of Africa was a strategic move to control and resupply ships. This station, which eventually grew into Cape Town, became a pivotal part of their network. The Dutch navigators were also instrumental in charting Australian coasts, which added to the breadth of their exploratory achievements. The VOC's impact on navigation and global exploration left a lasting legacy in how European nations viewed and interacted with the world.
As the 17th century progressed, the VOC's influence only grew. Their reach extended over continents, and they were establishing an early form of globalization. The power they held over trade had significant implications for the balance of power worldwide. The dominance they achieved in maritime trade routes was unmatched, and their methods often set the standards for future international trade practices. It's fascinating to witness how a company could wield such power that it shaped the tides of global trade as history unfolded.
As the 17th century went on, the VOC found itself face to face with new challenges. For the first time, other European nations like the English, French, and Danish began to become serious threats to their hold on trade. These emerging competitors were keen on breaking the VOC's monopoly, which meant the Dutch had to be more clever and swift in their strategies. The VOC tried to manipulate the market by flooding it with certain spices to control prices and outsmart their rivals. But this wasn't always enough.
That's true. And the towering costs of maintaining such a vast trade network started cutting into the VOC's profits. They had to adjust their focus from spices to other goods like coffee, tea, and textiles. But there was another issue. The Japanese had tightened their grip on silver exports, which was a central part of the VOC's trading game with Asia. This restriction further strained the VOC's financial plans and added to their growing list of challenges.
The VOC had to change how they operated. They decided to increase their shipping capacity by building more and larger ships to handle their growing trade in bulk goods. Though shipping more goods seemed like a sound plan, the costs involved in expanding their fleet and the operations surrounding it were massive. It became an intricate balancing act, trying to keep the profits flowing while managing these hefty expenditures. These decisions were crucial to the VOC's strategy for staying afloat against the roaring tides of competition.
Yet, amid all these transformations, internal troubles began simmering. Corruption was rife, with officials indulging in bribes and secret trade deals. The governance of the company started to become a tangled mess. Although the VOC tried hard to confront the external pressures, the seeds of decline were being sown from within. The cracks were beginning to show, and only time would tell how much longer they could keep things patched up. It's a pivotal moment in the VOC's story and a precursor to what would unfold next.
Over time, the impressive facade of the VOC began to show serious cracks. Internally, the company was becoming increasingly hard to manage. Corruption was rife, with many officials engaged in shady dealings for personal gain. The company started drifting away from its disciplined approach, and inefficiencies began creeping into its operations. A dramatic event that marked this decline was the massacre in Batavia in 1740. It was a shocking display of violence that left its stain on the company's reputation.
Absolutely. That massacre had devastating consequences. It was not just a loss of life, but a political disaster that attracted negative attention both locally and in the Netherlands. The VOC's actions were under scrutiny, and it led to some significant political repercussions, further weakening the company's control. To make matters worse, when the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War broke out, the VOC was not in the position of power it once held. The British forces managed to devastate the Dutch trading fleets effectively.
The VOC's losses during the war were immense. Although some territories were returned to them after peace was negotiated, the damage had been done. Their economic and strategic position was significantly compromised. At this point, the company was struggling to find the strength it once boasted. Each attempt to regain dominance failed to yield the desired results. Despite efforts to pivot their operations, the glory days of the VOC had passed, and they soon found themselves in financial ruin.
In 1796, the unavoidable happened. The VOC declared bankruptcy. It was a monumental end for what may be seen as the world's first multinational corporation. Even though they eventually fell, the VOC left a significant mark in history. Their legacy includes pioneering approaches in global trade, finance, and governance well before modern international business as we know it took shape. The VOC's story offers valuable lessons, both as a cautionary tale on unchecked power and ambition, and as an inspiration for innovation.
As we wrap up our exploration today, let's bring it back to Amsterdam, a city that charms with its unique character and stories from the past. The echoes of the VOC era can still be felt in the city, shaping not just the economy it once fueled, but also the rich tapestry of its cultural heritage. Reflecting on this history reminds us of the profound influence colonial powers have had on today's world.
Indeed, history is a lens through which we better understand the world around us. If today's podcast sparked your curiosity, consider digging deeper into these fascinating topics. Also, remember to like and subscribe to ensure you don't miss our next episode, where we'll unravel more intriguing histories. Your support encourages us to continue creating content, so please leave a comment and share your thoughts. Until next time.